What if I told you that three of the most extreme places on Earth, a deadly jungle, a lifeless desert, and a frozen continent, are no longer hiding their secrets? For centuries, humanity believed that some parts of the world were simply empty. We believed the Amazon was only wild forest. We believed the Sahara had always been dry and dead. And we believed Antarctica was nothing more than ice, wind, and silence. But today, those beliefs are collapsing. Not because of explorers, not because of archaeologists with shovels, not because of ancient maps. They are collapsing because of artificial intelligence. For the first time in human history, AI is scanning beneath the surface of the Earth itself. It is seeing through thick jungle canopies, kilometers of desert sand, and mountains of solid ice. And what it is revealing is rewriting everything we thought we knew about our planet's past. Deep beneath the Amazon rainforest, where the trees are so dense that sunlight barely touches the ground, AI detected the outlines of massive ancient cities, roads, settlements, urban structures, civilizations that once supported millions of people, completely erased by time and hidden beneath green. Beneath the Sahara Desert, a place we once believed had always been lifeless, AI uncovered buried rivers, ancient lakes, and forgotten trade routes. Proof that one of the world's harshest deserts was once a thriving land of water, movement, and civilization. And beneath the frozen wasteland of Antarctica, under kilometers of solid ice, AI revealed underground rivers, deep valleys, massive mountain ranges, and strange formations locked away for millions of years. A hidden world beneath the coldest place on Earth. 3 locations, 3 extreme environments, 3 lost worlds, all forgotten, all erased by nature, all now being revealed by machines. For thousands of years, human history depended on what the human eye could see. We believed that what was buried was gone forever. But AI does not look at the world the way humans do. It does not care about surface appearance. It reads patterns, density, movement, and signals hidden beneath layers that no shovel could ever reach. And when those patterns appear, history changes. What you are about to see in this documentary is not fiction. These are not legends. These are not internet rumors. These are real AI-assisted discoveries that are already forcing scientists to question how ancient human civilization truly is, and how many chapters of our past were completely erased. From the cities buried beneath the Amazon, to the rivers hidden under the Sahara, to the frozen secrets trapped beneath Antarctica. This is a story of how nature buried history, and how artificial intelligence is now bringing it back. Before we begin, if you are interested in real discoveries, forgotten civilizations, and the deep mysteries hidden beneath our world, make sure you are subscribed. Because what follows is not just a story of lost lands. It is the story of how fragile our civilization truly is. And we begin in the heart of the green hell, the Amazon. For most of modern history, the Amazon rainforest was viewed as one of the last truly wild places on Earth. A vast, endless sea of trees stretching across millions of square kilometers. Scientists believed that the environment of the Amazon was simply too extreme to support large-scale human civilization. The soil was considered poor for agriculture. The climate was considered too humid. Diseases were widespread, and dense vegetation made permanent urban development nearly impossible. The official narrative was clear. Small tribes had always lived in the Amazon. Hunter-gatherers, scattered settlements, temporary villages, no large cities, no advanced infrastructure. This idea was taught in textbooks, shown in documentaries, repeated in universities. Generation after generation grew up believing that the Amazon had always been nature's domain, not humanity's. In other words, the Amazon was seen as a place that resisted civilization. Even when early European explorers described seeing large populations, wide roads, and organized settlements along the rivers in the 1500s, those accounts were later dismissed. Historians argued that the explorers had exaggerated their stories. It was believed that disease brought by Europeans killed off small tribes, not entire advanced civilizations. For centuries, this belief remained unchallenged. And the reason was simple. No one could see beneath the jungle. The Amazon grows fast. Trees spread rapidly. Vegetation swallows everything. Within a few hundred years, entire cities can disappear under layers of green life. Traditional archaeology could only dig where the ground was visible. But in the Amazon, the ground was never visible. Every inch was covered by forest. So history made a quiet assumption. What we cannot see probably never existed. That assumption would change forever. In the late 20th and early 21st century, a new technology began to appear in scientific research. LiDAR. LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. It works by sending millions of laser pulses from aircraft or satellites down toward the Earth. These lasers bounce off surfaces and return back to the sensor. By measuring how long the light takes to return, computers can build high-resolution 3D maps of the terrain. What made LiDAR revolutionary was one critical ability. It could see through trees. Not literally with vision, but statistically. When millions of laser beams hit a forest, some strike leaves, some strike branches, and some pass through gaps and strike the ground below. With enough data, artificial intelligence can filter out all vegetation and reconstruct only the shape of the land underneath. For the first time in human history, scientists gained the ability to digitally remove an entire jungle. And that is when everything changed. At first, LiDAR was used for simple mapping projects, river systems, mountain contours, surveying land for construction. But eventually, researchers began using eye-powered LiDAR scanning over dense rainforest, including the Amazon. What they expected to find were small mounds, maybe a few ruins, perhaps remnants of small villages. What they found instead shocked the world. As early LiDAR scans began to come in, strange geometric shapes started appearing on computer screens. Perfectly straight lines, symmetrical squares, circular formations, long raised causeways, terrace platforms, artificial hills. At first, scientists thought the data was wrong. Nature does not create straight roads. Nature does not build rectangles. Nature does not plan cities. The AI kept finding the same patterns again and again across different regions, separated by hundreds of kilometers. When researchers finally verified the data on the ground, the truth became undeniable. The Amazon rainforest was hiding one of the largest lost urban landscapes in human history. Not one city, not 10 cities, not 100, but thousands. Over the years, as more regions were scanned, the scale of the discovery became clearer. AI revealed thousands of ancient cities, vast road networks connecting settlements, long causeways built over swampy land, large irrigation canals, engineered agricultural fields, defensive earthworks, massive geometric platforms, artificial hills shaped by humans. These were not primitive villages. These were large, organized urban systems. Some cities covered several square kilometers. Others were connected by hundreds of kilometers of elevated roads. Some areas showed population density similar to medieval European cities. In regions of modern-day Bolivia, Brazil, Ecuador, and Peru, LiDAR uncovered a civilization that scientists had never imagined possible in the Amazon. In one area alone, researchers identified more than 20 major settlements linked by road systems. In other regions, the number climbed into the hundreds. Eventually, studies suggested that millions of people may have lived in the Amazon at its peak. This finding alone shattered the old belief that the Amazon could not support large populations. It did support them. It once sustained massive societies. They simply vanished. The newly revealed cities were not random. They were planned. Settlements were arranged in grids. Roads connected cities in straight lines. Canals managed water flow. Terrace fields controlled agriculture. Residential zones were separated from ceremonial zones. This level of planning required advanced engineering, centralized organization, long-term land management, political coordination, agricultural innovation. These were not small tribes surviving day to day. These were complex societies. The AI discovered evidence of raised fields that protected crops from flooding. It found drainage systems that prevented waterlogging. It detected causeways that crossed seasonal wetlands and connected distant regions. For the first time, scientists had to accept a new reality. The Amazon was not a wilderness that resisted civilization. It was shaped by civilization. The next question was obvious. If such massive cities existed, why did no one find them earlier? The answer was simple and unsettling. Because the jungle won. After the collapse of these civilizations, likely caused by disease, environmental shifts, warfare, or European contact, nature took over. Within a few generations, trees swallowed walls, roots crushed stone, soil covered platforms, rivers changed course. To human eyes, the cities disappeared completely. Even when archaeologists walked directly over ancient roads, they believed they were walking on natural ridges. When they stood on artificial hills, they believed they were standing on natural terrain. Without AI, without LiDAR, without computational filtering, the truth remained hidden. This meant that for centuries, humanity was literally standing on top of advanced ancient civilizations, without ever knowing it. Before AI, historians saw the Amazon as a blank space in ancient urban history. After AI, the Amazon became one of the most important archaeological regions on Earth. Before AI, civilization was believed to grow only in dry river valleys like the Nile, Tigris-Euphrates, Indus, and Yellow River. After AI, civilization was confirmed to have also thrived deep inside tropical rainforests. This forced a total rethink of human adaptability. It proved that ancient humans were not just survivors. They were engineers, city builders, landscape shapers. It showed that civilization did not follow a single pattern. Human history was no longer linear. It became fragmented, complex, and far older than expected. Once the existence of Amazonian megacities was accepted, another mystery appeared. What destroyed them? There was no evidence of global volcanic eruptions wiping them out. No meteor impact. No massive climate freeze. Instead, the evidence pointed toward gradual collapse. Possibilities include environmental exhaustion from overfarming, soil depletion, internal conflict, diseases spreading through dense populations, seasonal flooding overwhelming infrastructure, early European diseases moving inland before direct contact. One of the strongest theories is that when Europeans arrived on the edges of the Amazon in the 16th century, diseases such as smallpox traveled faster than explorers themselves. Entire inland populations could have collapsed before outsiders ever reached their cities. When the populations fell, the jungle reclaimed everything with shocking speed. And within just a few centuries, one of the largest urban experiments in human history vanished from memory. The Amazon LiDAR discovery did more than reveal lost cities. It changed the entire framework of how human civilization is studied. It proved that civilizations do not always leave visible ruins. Societies can be erased without dramatic destruction. Nature can completely hide entire worlds. Human population levels in the past were massively underestimated. Tropical environments can sustain advanced urban systems. Most importantly, it proved that human history is incomplete not because people lied, but because people simply could not see. Artificial intelligence gave humanity new eyes. And with those new eyes, the past was forced into the present. After the Amazon discovery, one terrifying question entered scientific discussion. If millions of people lived and vanished in the Amazon without us knowing for centuries, what other civilizations have disappeared without a trace? Civilizations under deserts, under oceans, under polar ice, under modern cities, under our own feet. How many chapters of human history are still missing? And how many of them will only be revealed when machines continue to look where humans cannot? After the first LiDAR scans shocked the academic world, scientists knew that digital discoveries alone were not enough. The data had to be physically verified. Archaeological teams were sent deep into the Amazon to confirm what AI had detected from above. What they found on the ground matched the scans perfectly. Under layers of soil and vegetation, they uncovered timed precisely cut stone platforms, timed symmetrical defensive walls, timed artificially raised farmland, timed straight roads extending for kilometers, timed complex drainage systems, timed large ceremonial plazas. The structures were not random. They followed mathematical layouts. Angles were consistent. Distances were uniform. This confirmed intentional urban planning. The Amazon was no longer an untouched wilderness. It was a buried civilization. Once the scale became visible, the next question was population. Earlier estimates suggested that only a few 100,000 people could have lived in the Amazon before European contact. After AI base mapping, those numbers changed dramatically. New population estimates began reaching into the millions. Some conservative scientific estimates suggested times 5 to 10 million people lived across the Amazon basin at its peak. Other studies pushed that number even higher. This meant that the Amazon was not a secondary side region of human history. It was a major population center, comparable to the ancient Nile Valley, comparable to Mesopotamia, comparable to early China. Yet it vanished without leaving visible ruin for centuries. One of the most mind-shocking discoveries made through AI was not just cities, it was farming. For decades, scientists believed Amazon soil was too weak for long-term agriculture. It was assumed that the rainforest could only support temporary farming before becoming depleted. AI-based mapping destroyed that belief. LiDAR revealed massive networks of times raised agricultural fields, times water control canals, times terrace farmland, times artificial soil layers known as terra preta. Terra preta is one of the most mysterious discoveries tied to the Amazon. It is an artificially engineered black soil created by humans thousands of years ago. Unlike normal rainforest soil, terra preta is extremely fertile and remained productive even after centuries. This showed that Amazon civilizations, times understood soil science, times controlled flooding, times engineered agriculture, times and practiced sustainable farming at a massive scale. They did not fight the jungle. They mastered it. Another shocking AI discovery was road networks. Long, straight causeways connected cities and regions over vast distances. These roads cut directly through terrain that would normally be impossible to cross easily due to seasonal floods. Some of these roads stretched for times 10, 20, even 50 kilometers without deviation. This level of infrastructure meant times centralized planning, times organized labor, times political authority, times and long-term vision. These were not isolated villages. This was an interconnected civilization. One of the reasons Amazonian civilizations remained hidden for so long is because they did not build in massive stone like Egypt or Mesopotamia. Instead, they relied on times earthworks, times wooden structures, times mud-based architecture, times raised soil platforms. When these materials collapse, they simply return to the land. Stone pyramids may survive for 5,000 years. Soil platforms can disappear within a few hundred. Nature erased their fingerprints. Only AI could find what time erased. The biggest mystery remains their collapse. There is no evidence of sudden global destruction, no massive impact crater, no worldwide volcanic eruption, no nuclear-level catastrophe. The collapse appears to have been gradual. Evidence suggests times disease outbreaks, times resource pressure, times environmental overuse, times internal conflicts, times and most importantly, Old World diseases introduced through early European contact. Smallpox, influenza, measles, these diseases moved faster than explorers themselves. Entire inland populations could collapse without ever seeing a European face. By the time explorers recorded an empty jungle, the cities were already dead. The jungle simply finished the job. When the first large-scale peer-reviewed LiDAR studies were published, history books had to change. The Amazon was officially reclassified from a marginal human zone to one of the largest lost urban systems in human history. This changed major assumptions. Times civilizations were not limited to river valleys. Times tropical environments could sustain megacities. Times urban planning was more widespread than believed. Times ancient human populations were massively underestimated. Most importantly, human history became less certain. And that was the most dangerous revelation of all. Once scientists accepted that millions of people lived and vanished in the Amazon without visible ruins, a terrifying possibility emerged. If this could happen here, it could happen anywhere. Under the Sahara, under the North Sea, under Southeast Asian jungles, under Antarctic ice, under modern cities. Entire civilizations may have disappeared without leaving monuments. Human history may not be a straight timeline. It may be a cycle of civilizations, rising and vanishing, again and again. This is the most important truth of the Amazon discovery. AI did not create new mysteries. It revealed mysteries that were already there. For thousands of years, humanity walked across buried cities without knowing it. Farmed land shaped by unknown hands. Followed ancient road lines without realizing it. and built new lives on top of forgotten civilizations. Artificial intelligence simply pulled the curtain back. Before AI, the Amazon was viewed as pure wilderness. After AI, the Amazon became a lost world of human engineering. Before AI, humans were thought to be visitors in the jungle. After AI, humans were revealed as architects of the jungle. This single discovery reshaped times archaeology, times anthropology, times human migration theory, times population history, times environmental science, times and the very idea of what civilization actually is. If one of humanity's largest civilizations disappeared without memory in the Amazon, then how much of our own history is still missing? And how many answers are still waiting beneath forests, deserts, oceans, and ice? For most of recorded history, the Sahara Desert has been seen as the ultimate symbol of lifelessness, an endless ocean of sand, burning heat, zero water, no permanent settlements, no lasting civilizations, just wind, dust, and silence. It is the largest hot desert on Earth, larger than the United States. Harsh, dry, merciless. For generations, textbooks told the same story. The Sahara has always been a desert, and deserts cannot sustain civilizations. This belief became so deeply rooted in human thinking that very few scientists ever questioned it. But that belief was wrong, and artificial intelligence was a tool that finally proved it. Before AI entered climate science and satellite archaeology, the Sahara was understood very simply. Times extreme dryness, times no stable rivers, times no agriculture, times no long-term human settlements. The only accepted civilizations near the Sahara were times the Nile Valley, Egypt, times Mediterranean coasts, times West African trade routes at the desert's edge. The Sahara itself, considered a natural death zone. Even ancient maps showed it as blank. Modern science believed humans passed through the Sahara, but they never lived in it at large scale. This belief shaped everything. Times human migration theories, times African civilization timelines, times climate history models, and no one seriously challenged it, until machines started looking beneath the sand. In the late 20th and early 21st century, new satellite technologies emerged that did something extraordinary. They could see beneath the Earth's surface, using times radar imaging, times infrared sensors, times eye-based terrain modeling, times subsurface scanning. Scientists gained the ability to digitally remove sand layers and analyze what lay hidden beneath. At first, they used this technology to study oil deposits and groundwater reserves. But then, strange things appeared. Not random geological patterns, not cracks, not wind-formed shapes. What appeared were times vast underground river systems, times dry lake basins, times buried coastlines, times straight channel-like formations, times rectangular outlines beneath sand. These were not natural. These were signatures of water and human activity. AI-driven satellite scans began revealing rivers beneath the Sahara that were larger than most of today's rivers. One of the most famous discoveries was the Paleo River systems of North Africa. These included times a massive buried river system beneath Egypt and Sudan, times ancient tributaries connected to the Nile, times entire river networks stretching thousands of kilometers. These were not seasonal streams. These were permanent mega-rivers. And rivers mean only one thing in ancient history: civilization. As AI analyzed climate data alongside satellite scans, another truth became impossible to deny. The Sahara was not always a desert. It was once times grasslands, times savannas, times forest patches, times lakes, times rivers, times wetlands. This phase is now known as the Green Sahara period or the African Humid period. It lasted for thousands of years. During this time, times rainfall was regular, times monsoons reached deep into Africa, times vegetation covered vast areas, times animals thrived, times humans settled in large numbers. The Sahara was not the planet's largest desert. It was one of its most fertile regions. Using machine learning climate models, scientists fed AI thousands of years of data, times ice cores, times ocean sediment records, times fossil pollen, times ancient river sediments, times rock erosion patterns. The AI reconstructed what the Sahara looked like thousands of years ago. The results were shocking. The Sahara once contained times massive freshwater lakes larger than modern lakes, times rivers flowing into the Atlantic and Mediterranean, times permanent fishing zones, times grazing lands for millions of animals, times farming zones for humans. Some reconstructed lakes were larger than times Lake Victoria, times the Caspian Sea in some phases. This means the Sahara was once one of Earth's greatest water landscapes. Once water was confirmed, scientists asked the obvious question: if water existed, where are the people? AI answered that too. Under layers of sand, radar imaging began revealing times stone foundations, times circular settlement layouts, times old water wells, times ancient fishing docks, times rock-cut canals, times burial mounds. These discoveries appeared across times Libya, times Chad, times Egypt, times Niger, times Algeria, times Sudan. Entire settlement networks had vanished under dunes. Some sites showed times central villages, times roads connecting distant locations, times evidence of permanent living. These were not nomads. These were settled civilizations. Before these discoveries, scientists believed humans migrated out of Africa mainly through times the Red Sea corridor, times the Mediterranean coasts. But AI-based Sahara reconstruction revealed something revolutionary. The Sahara itself was once a migration highway. People moved, times from Central Africa to North Africa, times from West Africa to the Nile, times from the Sahara to the Mediterranean, times and into Europe. The desert we see today once connected worlds. This means human migration did not move around the Sahara. It moved through the Sahara. History had to be rewritten. One of the most controversial revelations was this: some Sahara settlements may be older than ancient Egypt itself. Archaeological dating of wells, pottery, and settlement remains revealed ages of times 8,000 years, times 9,000 years, times some estimates even push beyond 10,000 years. This places organized life in the Sahara before the first Egyptian dynasties, meaning advanced human societies existed in Africa long before modern civilization timeline suggests. AI climate models reveal the killer climate shift. Earth's orbital wobble gradually changed. Times monsoon patterns, times seasonal rainfall, times wind directions. Over time, times rainfall weakened, times lakes began shrinking, times rivers dried, times vegetation died, times soil turned to sand. Slowly, the Sahara transformed into a desert. Civilizations did not fall suddenly. They migrated slowly, times towards the Nile, times towards West Africa, times towards the Mediterranean. The desert swallowed what they left behind, because sand is a perfect hiding material. Cities of stone collapsed but remain visible. Cities of mud and earth vanished completely. In the Sahara, times dunes move constantly. Times sand buries everything. Times entire landscapes disappear within centuries. Without AI and radar, no human eye could ever see through kilometers of sand. Here history takes a powerful turn. In Section 2, we saw jungle-swallowed cities. In Section 3, we see desert-swallowed rivers and civilizations. Two opposite landscapes. Same result. Total loss of history. Only artificial intelligence could recover both. If times the Amazon hid megacities, times the Sahara hid mega-rivers and civilizations, then how many worlds are still buried under? Times oceans, times ice caps, times modern cities, times mountain ranges. Human history is not only incomplete, it is broken into pieces scattered beneath the earth. Once artificial intelligence confirmed the existence of massive buried river systems beneath the Sahara, scientific attention shifted from theory to reconstruction. The goal was no longer just to prove that water once existed in the desert, but to understand how that water shaped entire human civilizations. AI-driven terrain modeling, when combined with radar satellite data, began revealing something far more complex than isolated lakes or seasonal streams. What emerged was an interconnected hydrological system that once stretched across vast sections of North Africa. These were not small riverbeds carved by temporary rainfall. These were ancient mega-rivers with branching tributaries, floodplains, and well-defined drainage basins. Some of these rivers were wider than many of today's major waterways. Their courses could be traced for hundreds and sometimes thousands of kilometers beneath layers of sand. What made this discovery so disturbing was not only the size of these rivers, but their strategic positioning. They flowed through regions that today are utterly lifeless, yet in the past would have been ideal for agriculture, trade, and permanent settlement. As AI continued to process geological layers beneath the Sahara, it became clear that these rivers did not exist in isolation. They fed into enormous inland lakes, some of which were larger than many of today's most famous freshwater bodies. These lakes acted as climate stabilizers, supporting surrounding ecosystems for thousands of years. They created rainfall cycles, maintained soil fertility, and supported animal migration routes. Around these lakes, AI detected settlement patterns that showed signs of long-term human habitation. These were not camps. These were structured communities designed to last across generations. The discovery forced a radical shift in our understanding of climate history. Instead of viewing the Sahara as a naturally permanent desert, scientists began to recognize it as a landscape that had undergone vast environmental transformations. At one point in Earth's history, the Sahara was not only green, but one of the most biologically productive regions on the planet. Grassland stretched for thousands of kilometers. Herds of wild animals roamed freely. Fishing communities flourished along massive freshwater systems. Human populations did not merely survive here, they prospered. As AI reconstructed temperature patterns and atmospheric circulation models from thousands of years ago, a clearer picture began to form. The monsoon belt that today barely touches the southern edge of Sahara once extended far into the heart of the desert. Seasonal rains fell consistently. Rivers flowed year-round. Vegetation cycles followed predictable patterns. This climate stability allowed human societies to settle permanently, develop agriculture, and establish complex social systems. The most unsettling realization came when scientists mapped ancient trade corridors beneath the sand. AI revealed faint but unmistakable linear patterns crisscrossing the Sahara floor in ways that could not be explained by natural erosion. These were trade routes. These were roads. These were the pathways of ancient human economies. People were moving goods, resources, livestock, and possibly even early forms of currency across regions that today appear completely impassable. Some of these routes connected West Africa to the Nile Basin. Others extended toward the Mediterranean. This meant that the Sahara was not a barrier separating civilizations. It was once the central artery that connected them. It functioned as Africa's economic heart rather than its geographic dead zone. This alone shattered centuries of historical assumptions. Even more troubling was what AI revealed beneath these routes. In several locations, rectangular foundation patterns emerged beneath meters of sand. These were not natural rock formations. These were settlement remains, permanent housing zones, storage areas, defensive boundaries, workshops. The layout of these sites showed urban planning principles that were previously attributed only to river valley civilizations like Mesopotamia and Egypt. Dating these structures revealed timelines that placed many of them thousands of years before the classical age of known civilizations. That meant organized urban life was flourishing in the Sahara long before the pyramids were constructed. The implications were staggering. Entire chapters of civilization had existed without leaving behind the stone monuments that normally preserve history. These societies were erased not by catastrophe alone, but by slow environmental change and the immense power of migrating sand. As this realization spread across the scientific community, long-held theories about early African migration were upended. For decades, anthropologists believed that early humans mostly migrated along coastlines and rivers at the edges of deserts, avoiding large arid regions. AI proved that this was only half the story. The Sahara itself once served as a migration superhighway. Human populations moved freely through what is now the largest hot desert on Earth. This revelation restructured the genetic map of humanity. Geneticists began finding evidence that ancient populations from Central Africa, North Africa, and even parts of the Middle East were far more closely connected than previously believed. DNA markers that once appeared mysterious now made sense when mapped along these ancient Sahara routes. Human history became less fragmented and more fluid than ever imagined. Yet for all this prosperity, the Sahara civilizations left behind a haunting mystery. They did not vanish in a single moment of destruction. There was no obvious apocalyptic event, no sudden extinction. Instead, AI climate models showed a slow and relentless transformation of the environment. The monsoon belt shifted gradually. Rainfall diminished over centuries. Lakes shrank. Rivers narrowed. Vegetation thinned. Soil became unstable. Life retreated step by step. Communities adapted at first. They moved closer to remaining water sources. They changed crops. They reduced herd sizes. They migrated seasonally. But eventually, the ecological balance collapsed. Water sources disappeared faster than people could follow them. Agricultural systems failed. Trade networks broke apart. Civilization did not end with an explosion. It dissolved into silence. As populations migrated out of the Sahara, they carried with them knowledge, culture, technologies, and social structures developed over millennia. Many scholars now believe that these migrating populations contributed directly to the rise of civilizations along the Nile, in the Maghreb, and deeper into West Africa. In this view, the Sahara was not a forgotten backwater but a central incubator of civilization itself. Yet the sand erased almost every visible trace of this vast human experiment. Without AI, nothing would have remained except myths, scattered fossils, and unexplained geological formations. Entire urban worlds vanished so completely that history itself forgot they had ever existed. The Amazon showed us how jungle can swallow cities. The Sahara shows us how desert can swallow rivers, trade routes, and whole civilizations. Different landscapes, same outcome, total disappearance. And yet, the fact that AI found both tells us something terrifying. It tells us that human history is not preserved by the earth. It is hidden by it. Only now, for the first time, do we have machines capable of unveiling what nature has been concealing for thousands of years. As artificial intelligence continued to analyze radar data beneath the Sahara, the discoveries move beyond water systems and enter the realm of organized human life. The presence of large rivers already suggested the possibility of settlement, but what emerged next exceeded every expectation. Beneath vast stretches of sand, AI detected networks of ancient trade corridors stretching across North Africa, connecting regions that today appear completely isolated from one another. These routes were not random. Their alignment showed intention, planning, and repeated use over long periods of time. They curved gently with the terrain, avoided flood zones, and followed the natural contours shaped by ancient riverbanks. These trade routes revealed something extraordinary. The Sahara had once functioned not as a barrier, but as a commercial heart of an ancient African world. Goods did not simply travel along the Nile or along the Mediterranean coastlines. They moved deep through what is now the desert. Resources from Central Africa flowed north. Mediterranean goods moved south. Stone, metals, animal products, grains, and early tools were exchanged across ecosystems that no longer exist. The economic life of this forgotten Sahara civilization was more advanced than anything previously imagined. AI mapping revealed clusters of settlement activity positioned at regular intervals along these routes. These were not accidental stops. They were structured rest hubs, trading centers, and permanent towns designed to support long-distance movement. Some of these locations contained large storage areas, indicating surplus production and centralized distribution. This was not survival living. This was organized economy. Even more disturbing were the patterns discovered beneath what had once been massive freshwater lakes. Subsurface imaging revealed circular settlement formations around these bodies of water, indicating fishing villages, agricultural hubs, and population centers that relied entirely on stable freshwater access. In some locations, concentric ring patterns suggested social organization around spiritual or ceremonial cores. These were not simple camps. These were structured communities with hierarchy, tradition, and cultural identity. As AI reconstructed ancient hydrological movement, it revealed that certain Sahara lakes were connected by channels that allowed water to move between basins during particularly wet periods. This effectively created a navigable interior water network spanning regions that today are separated by thousands of kilometers of dry sand. These waterways would have enabled fishing industries, boat travel, transport of goods, and consistent communication between distant population zones. The Sahara was not isolated. It was internally connected. Genetic research soon began to align with these discoveries. Human DNA mapping revealed migration signatures that matched the ancient river routes reconstructed by AI. These genetic markers demonstrated population movement across North Africa that could not be explained by coastal migration models alone. In other words, the desert itself had once carried people across continents. Modern populations in North Africa, the Sahara, and even parts of Europe carried traces of genetic mixing that pointed directly to these lost Sahara civilizations. This forced scientists to reinterpret the emergence of later civilizations. The rise of dynastic Egypt, long believed to have developed independently along the Nile, appeared increasingly linked to earlier populations migrating out of the Sahara as the climate collapsed. These migrating groups carried agricultural knowledge, irrigation methods, and early engineering concepts with them. Egypt was no longer viewed as an isolated miracle of history. It became the inheritor of knowledge from civilizations that had vanished into sand. West African civilizations showed similar connections. Long before medieval empires emerged in regions like Mali and Ghana, earlier population flows from the Sahara had already seeded the foundations of organized settlement and trade systems. The Sahara was revealed not only as a lost civilization, but as a lost origin point of multiple later civilizations. The deeper AI looked, the more it exposed a pattern of repeated collapse and rebirth. Civilizations did not simply rise once and continue forward. They rose, adapted, collapsed, migrated, and reassembled in new forms. Human history appeared cyclical rather than linear. Environmental stability created civilization. Environmental collapse dismantled it. The survivors carried fragments of culture forward until the process began again. What makes the Sahara collapse particularly unsettling is that it was not sudden or violent. It unfolded slowly across generations. The climate did not destroy these civilizations in a single catastrophe. It starved them gradually. Rainfall decreased incrementally. Rivers narrowed year by year. Lakes receded season by season. Crops failed more often. Trade networks weakened. Populations shrank silently. Eventually, communities abandoned their cities not in panic, but in exhaustion. Families migrated following the last reliable water sources. Some moved east toward the Nile. Others moved south toward West Africa. Many vanished into regions that no longer preserve archaeological records. The desert did not kill them quickly. It erased them slowly. AI climate modeling demonstrated that once the tipping point was reached, the Sahara's transformation accelerated beyond recovery. Wind patterns shifted. Sand mobilized. Vegetation collapsed. Soil lost structure. Once the desert became dominant, it locked the environment into a self-sustaining arid cycle that persists to this day. What was once fertile became mathematically incapable of returning to its original state without dramatic planetary scale change. The speed of this transformation on a geological scale was horrifyingly fast. Entire civilizations were erased within a few thousand years. From the perspective of deep time, this is a blink. Human societies that had taken millennia to build disappeared almost instantly in historical terms. Yet perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the Sahara discovery is not what vanished, but how completely it vanished. Unlike stone-based civilizations whose ruins scar the landscape for thousands of years, Sahara settlements were built primarily from clay, mud brick, wood, and natural composites. These materials dissolve without trace under pressure of water and sand. When dunes advanced over abandoned towns, they left almost nothing behind the surface. The earth did not merely bury these civilizations, it erased their fingerprints. For centuries, explorers crossed the Sahara believing it had always been empty. Even modern science accepted this illusion because no ruin stood above the surface to contradict it. History was not destroyed, it was hidden. The Amazon discovery taught humanity that jungle can swallow entire cities without leaving visible ruins. The Sahara discovery now teaches that deserts can swallow rivers, empires, an entire trade world without leaving visible scars. Opposite environments, identical outcome. Total historical disappearance. This realization transforms our understanding of human vulnerability. It proves that advanced societies do not require asteroids or supervolcanoes to vanish. All it takes is slow environmental drift. All it takes is a gradual loss of water. All it takes is a few centuries of climate instability. Civilization does not always fall with fire. Sometimes it fades with dust. The Sahara revelation also shattered the belief that Africa's early history was limited to narrow river valleys. Instead, Africa emerges as one of the planet's earliest and most complex arenas of human experimentation. Long before recognizable dynasties and written language, Africans were building water-based economies, farming landscapes, and trade networks on a massive scale. The Sahara was one of humanity's earliest laboratories of civilization. This directly challenges deeply ingrained narratives about the origins of complexity, technology, and long-range organization. It forces a rethinking of where innovation truly began and how many times it may have independently emerged. Artificial intelligence did not invent this history. It uncovered it. It lifted the sand digitally, peeled away the desert layer by layer, and reconstructed a world no human memory preserved. For the first time, machines became archaeologists of planetary ruin. And as the scope of the Sahara discovery became clearer, it inevitably reflected back on the Amazon. In Section 2, we watch nature reclaim engineered landscapes beneath endless vegetation. In the Sahara, we witness the opposite phenomenon, nature weaponizing aridity to erase oceans of water and civilization alike. In both cases, Earth proved itself to be the ultimate historian and the ultimate destroyer. What it chooses to preserve shapes what humanity believes about its own past. Now, with AI as a new witness, Earth's long-hidden chapters are being forced open. The question that remains is not whether more civilizations are buried beneath deserts and forests. The Sahara and the Amazon have already answered that. The real question is how many entire worlds vanish before we ever develop the tools to see them. How many civilizations rose, collapsed, migrated, and dissolved without leaving a single standing monument to mark their existence. Human history, once thought to be a clear chain of progress, is now fragmenting into layers of forgotten success and failure. The Sahara is no longer empty. It is silent, and beneath that silence lies proof that advanced human life once flourished when no one ever thought it could. As the full scale of the Sahara discoveries became clear, scientists were forced to confront a difficult question. If massive civilizations once thrived in a region that today is completely uninhabitable, then how secure is any civilization on Earth? For centuries, Egypt had been regarded as the uncontested cradle of advanced African civilization, a lone miracle rising out of desert isolation along the Nile. But the Sahara findings transformed that narrative. Egypt was no longer an isolated spark of progress surrounded by emptiness. It became part of a much older, much larger network of human development that had already risen, moved, and collapsed long before the first pyramids were built. The Nile itself began to look less like a unique birthplace and more like a refuge. As the Sahara dried, its migrating populations flowed toward permanent water sources. What Egypt inherited was not only people, but knowledge, farming techniques, irrigation logic, social organization, seasonal planning, and trade traditions all carried the fingerprints of earlier Sahara societies. Egypt did not emerge from nothing. It rose from the ashes of civilizations erased by climate. This realization changed the meaning of progress. Civilization no longer appeared as a single forward march from primitive to advanced. Instead, it resembled a repeating pattern. Societies emerged during stable climate periods, expanded when water were predictable, and collapsed when environmental balance was lost. Survivors carried fragments of culture into new regions, when new civilizations formed on the ruins of forgotten ones. Once this pattern was understood in the Sahara, scientists revisited other regions with new eyes. The Amazon example from Section 2 no longer looked like an exception. It became part of the same global cycle. In the Amazon, rainfall and forest growth erased cities under vegetation. In the Sahara, drought and sand erased rivers and settlements under desert. Two opposite forces of nature produce identical results. Total historical disappearance. Together, these discoveries shatter the comforting illusion that civilization leaves permanent footprints. The reality is far more fragile. Cities, trade networks, and entire societies can rise and vanish without leaving a single visible ruin behind. What remains in textbooks is not history in full. It is only what survived the planet's natural erasers. This forced historians to reconsider one of the most basic assumptions in archaeology, that the absence of ruins means the absence of civilization. The Sahara proved that civilizations can vanish not because they were weak, but because the earth itself changed around them. Their disappearance was not necessarily a failure of society. It was a consequence of living on a planet that never stops transforming. Artificial intelligence changed this conversation forever by becoming the first tool capable of separating surface illusion from buried reality. For thousands of years, humans looked at endless dunes and saw nothing but emptiness. AI looked at the same surface and uncovered rivers, roads, trade corridors, lakes, and cities laid beneath centuries of sand. The desert did not suddenly change. Only our ability to see through it did. This same technological shift is now being applied to other parts of the world. Radar is scanning beneath ice sheets in Antarctica. Sonar is mapping city-like formations on ocean floors. AI is analyzing underground cavities beneath modern cities where ancient layers hide beneath concrete. Everywhere it looks, it raises the same unsettling possibility that the world we know is built directly on top of multiple forgotten worlds. The Sahara also introduced a darker truth about human vulnerability. These ancient civilizations did not collapse because of war alone. They did not disappear because of invasion alone. Many of them simply ran out of water. Their environment changed faster than their systems could adapt. Their irrigation failed. Their trade routes collapsed. Their food networks broke apart. The greatest killer of these civilizations was not violence. It was instability. This has uncomfortable implications for the modern world. Today's global civilization is more technologically advanced than anything before it, but it is also more interconnected and more dependent on stable climate patterns than any civilization in history. The Sahara shows that even slight long-term shifts in rainfall, temperature, and atmospheric circulation can dismantle entire worlds without warning. Collapse does not need explosions. It needs imbalance. Historians once believed that civilizational collapse was rare and exceptional. The Sahara suggests the opposite. Collapse may be the rule, not the exception. What survives into recorded history is only what happened to remain visible. Everything else disappears into the geological archive. When the Amazon and Sahara discoveries are viewed together, a disturbing picture emerges. Civilization has not risen once. It has risen many times. It has not fallen once. It has fallen repeatedly. Each cycle leaves fewer visible remains than the last, until only fragments survive in memory and myth. This redefines what ancient history truly means. It is no longer confined to what is written on stone or carved into monuments. Ancient history is now a layered system of buried human attempts to master a changing planet. Some succeeded for thousands of years. Some vanished quietly. Some left descendants who still walk the earth without knowing the full story of where they came from. Artificial intelligence is now doing what no previous generation could do. It is revealing not just single ruins, but entire lost landscapes. It is uncovering not isolated cities, but interconnected worlds erased by time, climate, and nature. It is transforming archaeology from the study of visible ruins into the study of invisible civilizations. And yet, for all this power, AI does not give certainty. It gives questions. Every discovery creates dozens of new mysteries. If the Sahara concealed mega-civilizations, what lies beneath the Gobi Desert? If the Amazon hid vast urban networks, what lies beneath Southeast Asian jungles? If ice hides rivers in Antarctica, what lies beneath glacier sheets formed over millions of years? Human history is no longer a straight timeline. It is a layered palimpsest written and rewritten by the Earth itself. Perhaps the most sobering conclusion of the Sahara discovery is this. Civilizations do not disappear because they are forgotten. They are forgotten because they disappear. Memory does not preserve history. Environment decides what survives. The cities beneath the Amazon were forgotten because the jungle grew faster than memory. The rivers beneath the Sahara were forgotten because sand moves faster than generations. The past is not lost because humans fail to remember it. It is lost because the planet rewrites its surface relentlessly. And now, for the first time, humanity possesses a tool that can read beneath that rewritten surface. Artificial intelligence has become a witness to everything the Earth tried to erase. The Sahara, once believed to be the visual symbol of emptiness, now stands as silent proof of abundance, collapse, and forgotten achievement. Beneath its dunes lie not just water and stone, but the remains of entire human worlds that lived, adapted, struggled, and disappeared long before modern civilization ever imagined itself to be the beginning of history. The Amazon showed us cities lost to green. The Sahara showed us rivers lost to sand. When these truths are placed side by side, a single conclusion becomes impossible to ignore. The world we live in today is not the first world, and it may not be the last. For most of modern history, Antarctica has existed in the human imagination as the most lifeless place on Earth, a frozen wasteland at the bottom of the world, endless ice, violent winds, permanent darkness for half the year, a continent so hostile that even survival feels unnatural. For a very long time, the world believed that Antarctica had always been this way, eternally frozen, eternally dead, eternally empty. School books taught that Antarctica formed as a frozen landmass millions of years ago and remained untouched by any form of civilization. Scientists describe it as a geological archive of ice, useful only for climate research and astrophysical observation. No one seriously entertained the idea that this continent might be hiding anything meaningful beneath its ice. But that belief began to crack when artificial intelligence entered polar research. What satellites and radar scans slowly revealed beneath Antarctica was not just bedrock and mountains. It was layered terrain, ancient valleys, deep river systems, vast underground lakes, and strangest of all, geometric patterns that did not look entirely natural. Suddenly, the world had to reconsider something it had never imagined before. Antarctica was not just frozen land. It was frozen history. The earliest shock did not come from conspiracy theorists or fringe researchers. It came from NASA and European space agencies using eye-driven ice-penetrating radar. Their mission was simple: map the bedrock beneath Antarctica to understand how ice behaved and how sea levels might change in the future. But instead of finding only uneven rock, they discovered entire river networks locked beneath kilometers of solid ice. These were not small streams. These were massive river basins carved into the land long before ice ever covered the continent. Some of these rivers were wider than modern European rivers. Some valleys were deeper than the Grand Canyon. And these structures were not random. They showed signs of erosion caused by flowing water over extremely long periods of time. This meant only one thing. Antarctica was once not only ice-free, it was wet, green, and warm enough to sustain flowing rivers. That single realization alone shattered a century of assumptions. As AI models reconstructed ancient climate conditions, a disturbing truth emerged. Antarctica was not always locked at the South Pole. It was once part of a warmer global system. Millions of years ago, it supported forests, rivers, animal life, and possibly early forms of advanced ecosystems similar to those that once existed in South America and Australia. Fossil discoveries soon backed this up. Scientists found remains of ancient trees buried beneath ice. They found pollen frozen inside ice cores. They found evidence of freshwater organisms hidden in subglacial lake systems. Everything pointed to the same conclusion: Antarctica was once alive. But what kind of life existed there? And more importantly, who lived alongside it? One of the most unsettling discoveries beneath Antarctica was not just rivers, but entire lakes trapped under the ice. The most famous of these was Lake Vostok, a massive freshwater body buried under nearly 4 kilometers of ice, sealed off from the outside world for millions of years. AI analysis of radar reflections showed that Lake Vostok was not alone. Dozens of similar subglacial lakes were scattered beneath Antarctica, some connected to each other by underground water channels. These were not stagnant pools. These were part of a functioning hydrological system hidden in total darkness. More disturbing still was that the terrain surrounding some of these lakes appeared unnaturally smooth, as if shaped intentionally rather than randomly. This raised an uncomfortable question that mainstream science initially avoided. Did Antarctica once host organized life, not just animals and plants, but possibly intelligent beings? As AI models became more precise, a new class of anomalies began emerging from radar scans. These anomalies appeared as symmetrical shapes beneath the ice. Straight-edged ridges, pyramid-like formations, perfectly aligned underground corridors, structures that appeared too orderly to be purely natural geological forms. At first, scientists dismissed these as radar artifacts. But the patterns persisted across multiple scans, using different satellites, different technologies, and different independent research teams. The same geometric patterns kept appearing, beneath kilometers of ice, hidden from human eyes, locked in frozen darkness. And that is when Antarctica transformed from a climate research zone into one of the greatest mysteries on Earth. As these discoveries accumulated, a deeper problem emerged. The timeline did not add up. Antarctica had been frozen for roughly 34 million years. Humanity, as a species, is only around 300,000 years old. Civilization, as we know it, is less than 12,000 years old. So if artificial structures truly existed beneath the ice, who built them, and when? This question fractured scientific debate in two directions. One side argued that everything could still be explained by unusual geological formations. The other side began quietly acknowledging that at least some structures defied easy natural explanation. Artificial intelligence itself did not claim civilization. It simply kept finding shapes that looked disturbingly organized. When the Antarctica discoveries are examined alongside the Amazon and Sahara revelations, a chilling pattern forms. In the Amazon, nature buried cities with vegetation. In the Sahara, nature buried civilization with sand. In Antarctica, nature buried whatever once existed with ice. Three completely different environments. One identical outcome: total concealment of the past. The Earth did not merely destroy these histories. It sealed them away. As artificial intelligence continued to refine radar scans beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, it became increasingly clear that what lay below was not a simple, frozen bedrock. Instead, researchers were looking at an entire hidden world shaped by forces that had operated long before ice ever touched the continent. Beneath kilometers of ice, AI revealed vast valleys carved by ancient rivers, enormous mountain ranges buried under frozen layers, and geological formations so complex that Antarctica began to resemble a second, inverted continent concealed beneath the first. One of the most significant discoveries was the presence of long, continuous river valleys stretching across hundreds of kilometers beneath the ice. These were not shallow surface grooves. These were deep channels carved into solid rock, indicating that powerful rivers once flowed freely across Antarctica for extremely long periods of geological time. The scale of erosion suggested that these rivers were not seasonal streams but permanent, high-volume water systems capable of reshaping entire landscapes. The existence of such river systems forced scientists to confront a radical truth. Antarctica could not have always been frozen. At some point in its history, it must have had a climate warm enough to support flowing rivers, rainfall, and a stable hydrological cycle. The continent that today represents the coldest place on Earth once had a climate capable of sustaining liquid water on a massive scale. As AI-based terrain reconstruction became more detailed, these underground rivers were mapped with astonishing precision. Their branching patterns resembled the river networks of South America and Africa. Tributaries fed into central basins. Floodplains extended outward from main channels. In some regions, ancient deltas were clearly visible beneath the ice, frozen in time. The presence of deltas meant that these rivers once emptied into large bodies of open water, not into ice. This raised an even deeper mystery. If rivers once existed, then where were the oceans or lakes they drained into? The answer came with the discovery of vast underground basins that appeared to be the remnants of ancient seas. AI models identified large, low-lying regions beneath Antarctica that once may have held immense quantities of liquid water. These were not small lakes like Lake Vostok alone. These were entire inland seas frozen beneath a moving glacier. These subterranean basins revealed layered sediment structures typical of long-term aquatic environments. The layering pattern suggested cycles of flooding, drying, and refilling over immense periods of time. This meant Antarctica was not merely warm for a short phase. It remained environmentally active across multiple climate cycles. What made this discovery even more unsettling was the symmetry observed in certain parts of the underground terrain. While many features could be explained through erosion and tectonic activity, there were distinct regions where patterns appeared unusually aligned. Straight ridges extended for many kilometers. Valleys intersected at angles that seemed too clean to result purely from natural chaos. These formations did not prove the existence of ancient construction, but they did create serious scientific discomfort. Nature rarely creates extensive straight-line formations at such consistency without some underlying structure guiding the process. As these anomalies multiplied, scientists were faced with a persistent problem. Antarctica's ice sheet is not static. It moves slowly over time, grinding the surface beneath it. If unusual structures still maintained their shape after millions of years of glacial pressure, it suggested that they were either extremely massive geological formations or something built with extraordinary durability. The possibility of ancient artificial structures beneath Antarctica remains one of the most controversial topics in modern earth science. Official institutions remain cautious, and for good reason. Direct excavation beneath kilometers of ice is technologically and politically almost impossible. Antarctica is protected by international treaties that heavily restrict invasive exploration. Even if something extraordinary existed beneath the ice, accessing it would require decades of preparation and unprecedented cooperation among nations. As a result, most of what we know about Antarctica's hidden world comes exclusively from remote sensing and artificial intelligence. In many ways, AI has become the only archaeologist capable of working in a place humans physically cannot reach. But the story does not end with rivers and valleys. One of the most dramatic revelations came with the identification of massive subglacial mountain ranges. These ranges rival some of the largest mountain systems on Earth, yet they are completely invisible from the surface. Buried under kilometers of solid ice, these mountains have existed in total darkness for millions of years. Glaciers stream over their peaks like slow-moving oceans, concealing their full scale from every satellite image that shows only flat, white emptiness above. These mountains provide further proof that Antarctica was once a dramatically different land. Mountains generate weather. They affect rainfall patterns, river flow, and climate distribution. Their presence suggests that ancient Antarctica had complex atmospheric systems capable of sustaining diverse ecosystems. As AI modeled these buried mountains alongside fossil evidence of flora discovered near Antarctica's edges, a coherent picture began to emerge. Antarctica once supported forests, not small shrubs or mosses alone, but full tree systems. Fossils of ancient tree trunks, preserved in stone, confirm the existence of climate strong enough to sustain large plant life. These forests would have fueled food chains of animals and microorganisms, creating a biologically active continent. If Antarctica once supported rivers, lakes, mountains, and forests, then the logical question is unavoidable. What lived there? Animal fossils found near Antarctica's periphery suggest that prehistoric creatures once inhabited the region. Some species resembled those that once lived in South America and Australia, reinforcing the idea that Antarctica was once connected to other landmasses as part of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana. This connectivity would have allowed life to migrate freely across regions that are today separated by vast oceans. But the mystery grows darker when human implications are considered. If Antarctica was not frozen until roughly 34 million years ago, it means that long before modern humans existed, the continent passed through a prolonged phase of warmth and biological activity. Some fringe theories speculate about intelligent life existing far earlier than mainstream science acknowledges, but no credible archaeological evidence currently supports the existence of human civilization in Antarctica itself. And yet, the radar anomalies remain unresolved. As radar imaging beneath Antarctica became more advanced, artificial intelligence began detecting patterns that could no longer be ignored as random geological noise. Certain subsurface formations appeared symmetrical over distances too large for coincidence. Long, straight ridgelines extended beneath the ice with consistent spacing. Deep angular valleys cut through buried mountains in ways that resembled engineered corridors rather than chaotic erosion. These formations did not prove the existence of ancient construction, but they did represent something highly unusual in the context of natural polar geology. Most geological formations, especially those shaped by tectonic forces and glacial movement, produce irregular, fractured structures. Antarctica's buried terrain, however, showed repeated instances of near-perfect alignment in specific zones. AI did not label these features as artificial. It simply classified them as non-random. That technical distinction is what created unease among scientists. Nature can produce straight lines, but nature rarely produces long, continuous, repetitive straight lines across multiple independent scans. The greatest challenge in interpreting these anomalies is the density of the ice above them. In many regions, Antarctic ice reaches nearly 5 kilometers in thickness. No drill currently in operation can penetrate that depth at scale. Even if technology existed to reach these buried formations, international treaties strictly prohibit excavation that could destabilize the ice sheet. Antarctica is protected not just by code, but by law. Because of this, all knowledge of Antarctica's deep structure remains indirect. AI works only with reflected signals. It builds three-dimensional reconstructions based on how radar waves bounce off underground objects. This method is powerful, but not absolute. It provides outlines, depths, and alignments, but it cannot directly confirm material composition. Stone, ice, and certain metals can sometimes reflect radar in similar ways under extreme pressure conditions. This uncertainty creates the scientific battleground where Antarctica's mystery now exists. One side argues that everything detected can still be explained through rare but natural geological processes. The other side does not insist on ancient civilization, but it does insist that some of what is being detected does not comfortably fit into known natural models. One of the most debated zones is a region informally referred to as a Forbidden Valley. This is a massive subsurface depression surrounded by buried mountain walls, entirely sealed beneath ice. Its geometry is unusual because it forms an enclosed system, not an open drainage basin. AI models suggest it once held a large volume of liquid water, possibly even an inland sea. The question is not merely what this valley is, but how it formed. If tectonic forces created it, why does it lack the chaotic fault structures normally associated with tectonic activity? If erosion carved it, what kind of water volume would be required to shape such a perfectly enclosed basin? These questions do not imply artificial origin, but they define a geological anomaly that remains unresolved. As more of these forbidden zones are mapped, a pattern slowly emerges. Antarctica is not a flat, dead continent beneath the ice. It is a hyper-complex topography with internal structures rivaling some of the most dynamic landscapes on Earth. Yet all of it remains sealed away from direct observation. This raises an uncomfortable philosophical issue. Humans have mapped the moon more thoroughly than they have mapped the land beneath Antarctica. We have detailed terrain models of Mars. We can analyze the surfaces of distant exoplanets. But beneath our own planet's southern ice cap, entire mountain ranges and ancient river systems exist in virtual darkness. The implications of this are not just scientific, they are cultural. Humanity's understanding of its own world is deeply incomplete. This is where historical narratives intersect with modern mystery. In the mid-20th century, Antarctica became a focal point for government interest on an unprecedented scale. Operation High Jump, one of the largest military-led expeditions to Antarctica, deployed thousands of personnel, aircraft, and ships under the leadership of Admiral Richard Byrd. Official record described the mission as a training and mapping exercise. Unofficial speculation exploded decades later with claims that something extraordinary had been encountered beneath the ice. Mainstream historians argue that these claims are unsupported, and they are correct to demand physical evidence. But the persistence of such stories points to a deeper psychological truth. Antarctica's secrecy invites speculation because its reality cannot easily be verified by the public. When information remains inaccessible, imagination fills a void. Artificial intelligence now functions as a partial corrective to that problem. It does not reveal secret underground civilizations. It reveals measurable, testable structures that demand explanation. In many cases, the explanations are geological. In others, the explanations remain unknown, and it is the unknown that sustains a mystery. Another critical element shaping Antarctica's mystery is its restricted access. Unlike most continents, Antarctica is not governed by traditional national authority. It is regulated by a network of international treaties. Military activity is officially prohibited. Resource extraction is heavily restricted. Certain regions are entirely off-limits to non-approved research teams. From a scientific standpoint, these restrictions exist to protect Earth's most fragile climate system. But from a cultural standpoint, they produce an unavoidable tension. The most mysterious place on Earth is also the hardest place on Earth to investigate freely. AI partially bypasses this limitation by analyzing declassified satellite data rather than requiring ground access. But even satellite data is filtered. Resolution limits, classified zones, and restricted frequency bands ensure that full transparency remains impossible. What emerges from this layered secrecy is a strange paradox. Antarctica is one of the most scientifically monitored locations on Earth, yet it is also one of the least directly explored environments in human history. From a climate perspective, Antarctica functions as a stabilizing force for the entire planet. Its ice reflects sunlight. Its ocean currents regulate temperature. Its freezing winds drive global atmospheric circulation, but from a historical perspective, it may contain the greatest archive of Earth's deep past hidden beneath kilometers of frozen time. One of the most unsettling implications of Antarctica's buried rivers is their scale. Some of these systems are larger than the modern Amazon's tributaries. That alone implies rainfall so intense and sustained that it contradicts much of what was previously believed about the continent's ancient climate. It suggests that Antarctica was not marginally warm. It was actively alive. This gives rise to a deeply uncomfortable question. If Antarctica transitioned from green to frozen once, could it ever transition again? AI-driven climate models suggest that under certain extreme planetary scenarios, polar ice could once again shrink dramatically. While such change lies far beyond current human lifespans, the possibility itself forces a reconsideration of permanence. Ice that seems eternal on human timescales is temporary on geological ones. This realization reframes Antarctica not as a timeless wasteland, but as a paused chapter in Earth's environmental story. It is frozen, not finished. And if Antarctica is paused, then its buried history is paused with it. The scientists who work with Antarctic radar often speak of their role in strangely poetic terms. They describe themselves as listening to echoes from a world that no longer exists. Every data return from beneath the ice is not just a signal. It is a fragment of a vanished landscape answering back across millions of years. Yet the more that AI uncovers, the clearer one truth becomes. Antarctica's mystery is not centered on a single hidden object or a single buried anomaly. It is a vastness of the unknown itself that defines its power. Amazon concealed cities beneath green. Sahara concealed rivers beneath sand. Antarctica concealed landscapes beneath ice. 3 environments. 1 lesson. Earth does not erase history in one way. It uses every method available. As the full depth of Antarctica's hidden geography continues to emerge through artificial intelligence, the scientific community finds itself standing at the edge of a profound realization. Antarctica is no longer merely a frozen continent at the bottom of the world. It is a suspended chapter of Earth's history, locked away beneath kilometers of ice, preserving the memory of a world that once breathed, flowed, and lived. For centuries, Antarctica symbolized emptiness. It stood as the ultimate representation of a dead planet within a living one. But AI shattered that illusion. Beneath the ice is not emptiness. Beneath the ice is structure, movement, complexity, memory, rivers that once flowed freely, basins that once held water for thousands of years, mountains that once shaped weather systems, valleys that once directed rainfall and life across entire regions. The frozen continent is no longer a symbol of death. It is a symbol of pause. In the Amazon, life was swallowed by growth. In the Sahara, life was erased by drought. In Antarctica, life was sealed by ice. 3 different forces of nature. 3 identical results. Civilization does not always leave ruins that humanity can find. Sometimes, it leaves only signals buried deep beneath Earth's most extreme environments. Antarctica forces us to confront one uncomfortable truth about our planet. Earth does not destroy its past in obvious ways. It hides it. It compresses it. It locks it into layers of sand, jungle, ocean, and ice where only the most advanced tools can reach it. And now, for the first time in human history, artificial intelligence is becoming that tool. What makes Antarctica so different from the Amazon and Sahara is the scale of its isolation. Jungle and desert still allow human footsteps. Ice does not. Antarctica is not merely difficult to access. It is actively hostile to exploration. Temperatures can drop low enough to instantly kill exposed human tissue. Winds can reach speed capable of flipping aircraft. Blizzards can trap expeditions for weeks without warning. Even modern technology struggles to survive there. This means Antarctica's mysteries do not simply belong to the past. They also belong to the limits of human reach. We can see beneath the ice, but we cannot touch what we see. We can model what lies below, but we cannot verify it directly. Knowledge exists without access. This creates a rare situation in science. Antarctica is one of the only places on Earth where awareness has advanced faster than physical exploration. We know something is there, but we cannot yet go there. The implications of this are enormous. Entire continents in human memory are being conquered, mapped, mined, settled, and reshaped. Antarctica remains the only landmass that still resists full human control. It stands as a reminder that civilization, no matter how advanced, still has frontiers it cannot dominate. And within that frontier may exist chapters of Earth's story that rewrite what humanity believes about ancient worlds. Climate modeling suggests that Antarctica's freeze was not sudden in human terms, but it was rapid in geological terms. Once ocean circulation isolated the continent, once snowfall outpaced melting, once reflective ice began amplifying solar deflection, the system locked itself into permanent glaciation. There was no gradual adaptation possible at that point. The environment crossed a threshold beyond which recovery became impossible. This is the same pattern that destroyed the Sahara's civilizations. A slow drift toward instability followed by a sudden irreversible collapse. Antarctica represents the most extreme version of that collapse. A world that did not merely dry out, but froze solid. Whatever ecosystems once flourished, they were not just displaced. They were entombed, and ice is a unique preserver. Unlike sand and jungle, ice does not always destroy what it covers. Sometimes, it preserves it with frightening precision. Microorganisms have been recovered alive from ancient Antarctic ice layers. DNA has survived frozen for millions of years. Atmospheric conditions have been locked inside ice bubbles, allowing scientists to breathe air from forgotten ages of the planet. If bacteria can survive in that frozen archive, the question arises naturally, what else might have survived in some form? Not living civilizations, certainly, but traces, chemical signatures, structural footprints, environmental records so complete that Antarctica may now represent the most intact biological library Earth has ever created. The realization transforms Antarctica from a wasteland into a vault of planetary memory. This is where the Antarctica mystery reaches its deepest philosophical layer. The Amazon teaches humanity that growth can erase history. The Sahara teaches that dryness can erase history. Antarctica teaches that preservation itself can erase history by locking it away so completely that no memory of it survives on the surface. Earth does not care whether humans remember their past. The planet evolves according to physics, chemistry, and energy balance. Civilizations rise as temporary electrical sparks across that ancient system. Then the system shifts, and the sparks go dark. What artificial intelligence has done is change the balance between memory and forgetting. For the first time, humanity can look beneath the world it walks on and see not just stone and date, but the architecture of vanished worlds. This is why Antarctica is more than a mystery of ice. It is a mirror. It forces modern civilization to question its own permanence. Today's cities are built with concrete and steel. They feel indestructible. But ancient civilizations once felt the same about stone and brick. They too believed they had mastered their environments. They too believed their rivers would always flow. Their climates would always sustain them. Their systems would always endure. Then the planet changed. Modern civilization is now bound to the same planet. The same atmospheric system. The same ocean currents. The same fragile balance of temperature and precipitation. The Sahara shows us what happens when water vanishes. Antarctica shows us what happens when water becomes too dominant and freezes the land itself. Two sides of the same planetary instability. The illusion that modern technology makes humanity immune to environmental collapse is now being challenged by the very machines that analyze Earth's past. AI does not see progress alone. It sees cycles. It detects the fingerprints of rise and fall repeated over millions of years. It shows us that permanence is not a feature of planets. It is a temporary condition. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Antarctica is not what is confirmed beneath the ice, but what remains unresolved. The radar anomalies persist. The forbidden valleys remain sealed. The buried mountains remain unreachable. The symmetrical forms remain unclassified. The question of whether all of this is purely natural remains open, not because science refuses to answer, but because the ice physically prevents the answer from being accessed. This gives Antarctica a unique position in human knowledge. It is not fully science. It is not fully mystery. It exists between them. And that is where the power of this frozen continent truly lies. Every generation that looks to Antarctica sees something different. Early explorers saw a monster to be conquered. Scientists saw a climate archive to be studied. Strategists saw a territory to be controlled. Artificial intelligence now sees a hidden world that predates all modern memory. What future generations will see remains unknown, but the direction is clear. The story of the Amazon told us that humanity's ancient cities were far more advanced and widespread than we ever believed. The story of the Sahara told us that entire trade civilizations thrive where today only death exists. The story of Antarctica tells us that Earth itself can entomb entire ecosystems under ice so completely that even the concept of memory is erased. Together, these three discoveries form a single, terrifying conclusion. Human civilization is not the first advanced chapter in Earth's story, and it will not be the last. Artificial intelligence has not uncovered isolated ruins. It has uncovered a repeating pattern of planetary amnesia. The Earth forgets, and it forgets absolutely. The only reason we now know this is because machines do not forget in the same way humans do. They do not rely on monuments. They read buried signals. They interpret shadows through ice. They decode echoes from flooded valleys and desiccated basins. They read what the planet tried to hide. Antarctica stands as the most extreme warning of all, not because it hides monsters, but because it proves that even entire worlds can disappear without leaving a surface trace. And one day, if climate shifts far enough, if oceans rise, if ice melts or deserts expand, the same fate that sealed the Sahara and Antarctica could rewrite the surface of the modern world as well. Cities would sink, rivers would vanish, civilizations would migrate, and new myth would be written by whatever intelligence studies the Earth after us. The frozen continent does not tell us what existed with certainty. It tells us something far more important. It tells us that disappearance is not an exception in Earth history. It is the rule. Amazon buried cities beneath green. The Sahara buried rivers beneath sand. And Antarctica buried worlds beneath ice. Different lands, same fate. History doesn't always disappear in fire. Sometimes it simply vanishes in silence. The only reason we now see any of this is because artificial intelligence learned how to look beneath the surface. And what it shows us is terrifying. Human civilization is fragile. The Earth is eternal.